Hi, welcome to Chapter 8, Social and Personality Development in Early Childhood. Today we're going to look at theories of social and personality development, personality and self-concept, gender development, family relationships and structure, and peer relationships. These are the objectives we'll be covering in this chapter. Just a reminder, we're going to start with a little bit with Freud. Freud talked about how the goal was to gain control over bodily functions and renegotiate parent relationships. First of all was that anal stage, which was dealing with toilet training and control over bodily functions. And the next stage was the phallic stage, which was the Oedipus or electrocomplex, which has to do with identifying with the same-sex parent. A little assignment that you could do for extra credit is doing what's called the My Virtual Life activity. Continue the activities up until the age of 6. Freud and Erikson saw the changing role of the parent as the child exerts more control on the environment. Freud and Erikson did not talk about peers or their significance in development. Erikson agreed with Freud concerning the added focus on social skill development and autonomy versus shame and doubt. It was centered around a toddler's new mobility and desire for autonomy. The stage initiative versus guilt. It was ushered in by the new cognitive skills. The child's developing conscious dictates boundaries. Preschoolers' perceptions are inconsistent because they base them on the most recent interactions with individuals. Preschoolers categorize based on race, gender, and age. There's what's called the cross-race effect. Individuals are more likely to remember the face of the people of their own race than those of a different race. Preschoolers talk about big kids and little kids. They like to categorize. Preschoolers self-segregate by gender. This begins as early as age 2. They also sometimes segregate themselves according to race. Cross-race effect phenomena are seen by 5 years of age. Now, on the other hand, I see children really, they're not born racist. They learn it from other people. Next are understanding rule categories. There's what's called social conventions. Those are rules that serve to regulate behavior. Moral rules are regulations based on individuals' or society's sense of right or wrong. Preschoolers respond differently to social rules and moral rules between the ages of 2 and 3. Understanding develops on the basis of increased cognitive capabilities and adult emphasis on moral transgressions. So some research of racism in the classroom. Young children use developing race schemas to make judgments about others. This is called egocentrism. By the age of 5, white children in English-speaking countries have an understanding of their culture's stereotypes and prejudices. Very early in life, minority children experience and learn about race-based negative behaviors. In other words, they sense it, they see it. Strategies for preventing racism is discuss race openly with your child. Make conscious efforts to help children develop non-prejudice activities. Provide opportunities for mixed race group activities. Help children evaluate behavior by individual criteria. So how would you explain white preschool teachers' failure to notice race-based behaviors in their classrooms? How would information processing theory explain the influence of historical knowledge regarding slavery, discrimination, and civil rights movement on the development of preschoolers' ideas about race? Early judgments reflect ego thinking and immature cognitive structures rather than true racism. Understanding of cultural racial stereotypes and prejudices, they're slowly acquired by the age of 5. Next, a child saying it was an accident, I didn't mean to do it, when about to be punished, indicates an understanding that intentional wrongdoing is punished more severely than unintentional transgressions of the rules. Recent research suggests that children do understand intentions to some degree. They understand that punishment is for intentional acts. They also can make judgments about actors' intentions when faced with abstract problems and with punishment, but they can still be bound by consequences in their judgments. So true or false, children know more about intentions than Piaget theorized. but they still have limited ability to base their judgments entirely on intentions. Correct answer, true. The test of children's understanding of intentionality. Look at figure 8.1 or page 183 in your book. It's a test of children's understanding of intentionality. A playmate is good if she failed to hit the other child with the ball. Suggests that children know more about intentions than Piaget thought. Pictures like these have been used to assess young children's understanding of an actor's intentions. Now, a brief overview on self-concept. Gains in social environment understanding contribute to the emergence of distinctive personality. Self-concept starts becoming more complex. Exercise of greater control over behavior is aided. Personality represents a combination of temperament at birth and knowledge about temperament-related behavior acquired during childhood. Social rewards encourage impulse control and behavior is modified. These are components of the self-concept. There's what's called the categorical self, which focuses on visible characteristics. The emotional self, the acquisition of emotional self-regulation, associated with peer popularity, lack of control, associated with aggression, the ability to obey moral rules, associated with the emergence of empathy. The social self is the child sees him or herself as a player in social games, learns many social scripts which provide appropriate situational behaviors. Personality begins to replace temperament as children interact with peers and family. The control of emotions shifts from parental control to the child's self-control. Children begin to internalize values of the parent. Parents who expect age-related behaviors increase the switch to self-control. Next is the emotional self. Emotional regulation is the ability to control temperament. They have empathy for others. They can understand the emotional state of others. They can match that state to themselves. They have an understanding of cultural differences and moral emotions. This chart here just shows the stages of development in empathy, with starting with global empathy, egocentric empathy, empathy for another's feelings, and then for another's life conditions. Now, psychoanalytic explanations involve the identification with the same-sex parent. You remember the Oedipus complex. Social cognitive explanations of gender development is linked to gender-related behavior. The child becomes motivated to exhibit same-sex behaviors. Children early on understand this is how a male acts, this is how a female acts. Parents shape sex role behaviors and attitudes. The gender schema theory is a child learns gender scripts. They learn the likes and dislikes of his or her own gender and develops a complex view of the other gender. Gender understanding develops in stages. You have what's called gender identity, or the child's ability to label his or her own sex correctly. Gender stability is understanding that you are the same gender throughout your life. Gender constancy is recognition that someone stays the same gender even though appearances may change with clothing. Here's a nice little video that talks about adults' perception of boys and girls. Okay, this figure, page 187 in your book, it's in describing this self-portrait, the 5-year-old artist said, "This is how I will look when I get married to a boy. I am under a rainbow, so beautiful, with a bride hat, a belt, and a purse. The girl knows she will always be female and associates gender with externals such as clothing, which is gender stability. She also is already quite knowledgeable about gender role expectations." Now, the gender schema theory is the development of gender schema. It underlies gender development and occurs with recognition of gender differences. Schema organizes the process of thinking and remembering. The first primitive gender schema is assimilation of experiences. Okay, women are, here are some stereotypes. Women are associated with gentleness, weakness, appreciativeness, and soft-heartedness. Stereotype of men are associated with aggression, strength, cruelty, coarseness. Children learn these stereotypes by the age 3 or 4. They can assign stereotypical behaviors to jobs, toys, and activities. By age 5, children begin to associate personality traits with gender. Sex-type behavior, it develops earlier than ideas about gender. At about 18 to 24 months, children prefer sex stereotype toys. At age 3, children prefer same-sex friends. They learn from older same-sex children. Sex types behavior are learned differently. Girls use an enabling style. They have a supporting friend, expressing agreement, making suggestions. Boys use a constricting or restrictive style, which derails inappropriate interactions, bringing them to an end. Okay, this figure here shows how playmate preferences change. How would you structure preschool play opportunities based on this information? Next, securely attached preschoolers exhibit fewer behavior problems. Insecurely attached children display more anger and aggression at daycare and at preschool. By age 4, children from goals-corrected partnerships, relationships continue to exist even when partners are apart. They form an internal model of attachment and it begins to generalize. Okay, Diana Baumrind focused on 4 dimensions of parenting style. There's one based on warmth or nurturance, clarity and consistency of rules, maturity of expectations and demands, communications between child and parent. So those are the 4 dimensions. The 3 parenting styles would be authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative. Now, authoritarian is, I would use as the over-controlling parent, maybe the helicopter parent that likes to rescue the child and control all the situations at home and at school. Permissive parent, I guess another example would be the free-range child, which they let the child do whatever they want and wherever they want. And I don't know, growing up on a farm, I had pretty permissive parents. I was a free-range child. I turned out okay. Authoritative is kind of like a parent who's more democratic, not violent or abusive, controlling, but they allow the child to have their own choices and decisions, but they provide a safe environment of structure with the ability to make good choices. Maccabee and Miller added uninvolved parents and neglecting parents. So to spank or not to spank? The consequences of spanking, the short-term undesirable behavior is usually reduced and stopped. So it looks like it's effective right away. Long-term, it models infliction of pain as a technique. It limits spanking parent with pain, or links the parent to pain, creates a family climate of emotional rejection associated with higher child aggression. The higher risk is some genetic factors enhance risk. So if the kid has mental disability or something, they could have higher risk for abuse. Recommendations: it's never appropriate for children under 2 to be spanked. It's best not to spank. If it is to be used, spank only when harm to child or others is at stake, and provide explanations instead. The problem with spanking is how people define it. It could be defined as a gentle swat on a diaper bottom when a child is like walking out into a street, to punching a child in the face, with a fist. So spanking is sometimes taken out of proportion. The key is there's good alternatives. One is timeout, usually 1 minute per age of life, up till age 12. After age 12, you could take away privileges. You notice teenagers love their cell phones. They love privileges to use the car and to go out. So there's a lot of things that are a lot more effective. Look back at the operant conditioning principle of extinction in Chapter 1. How might it be used to diminish Marie's daughter's whining? Whining could be reinforced with what's called negative reinforcement. However, the principle of extinction is do not give attention to whining behavior, and hopefully that behavior would decrease. In what ways does having been spanked as a child influence an adult's views about acceptability of spanking? Basically, if a person grew up with being spanked, they're probably more likely to accept it, unless they decide to pick more effective means to shape behavior. Next, parenting characteristics. There's a high level of demand and control, low levels of warmth and communication. Traits last well into high school. So consequences of authoritarian parent, there's usually have good school performance, there's high expectations, lowered self-esteem and fewer peer interaction skills. Some are subdued, others are highly aggressive. Now, permissive parenting, they tend to be high in warmth and communication, low in demand and control. Consequences are poor adolescent school performance, more aggressive and immature, less responsible and independent. Where authoritative parents are high in warmth and communication, high in demand and control. This has the most consistently positive outcomes: higher self-esteem, independence, and altruism, more parental compliance, self-confident, and achievement-oriented, better school performance. Maccabee and Martin added the uninvolved type, which produces the most negatively, consistently negative outcomes. Uninvolved leads to low in levels of demand and control, low in levels of warmth and communication. And they usually have disturbances in social relationships, more impulsive, antisocial, less confident with peers, much less achievement-oriented. Authoritative parents are more likely to be involved in the child's school. They use what's called inductive discipline, which is a strategy in which parents explain to the child why punished behavior is wrong. They help children in preschool to gain control of their behavior and gain perspectives of other feelings. And there's a nice little video on the different parenting styles. Okay, let's take a look at short-term effects of spanking. It temporarily reduces undesirable behavior. The long-term effects, it models infliction of pain, associates spanking parents with physical pain, leads to a family climate of emotional rejection. Any high-frequency activity can be used as a reinforcer for any lower-frequency activity. That's a Premack's principle. The other one, to make it simpler, is if you do this, then you can do this. I call it Grandma's principle. Authoritarian pattern is White and Hispanic teenagers raised in authoritative households show more self-reliance and less delinquency. Strong connections between authoritarian pattern and school performance and social competence appear for Asian Americans and African Americans. So with Asian American families, there's higher levels of achievement. And people say, your book kind of suggests it's not because Asians tend to test well. It's not necessarily genetic. It's more of environmental and cultural. That the family does not value God-given gifts. Instead, they value working hard and motivation, trying hard and doing the best you can. Authoritarian pattern among African American families enhances children's potential for self-control, prepares children to deal with social forces, reduces the use of substance abuse. This is more common among poor families. Family structure, diversity in two-parent and single-parent families. Only 70% of U.S. children lived with both biological parents in 2007. Many children from two-parent families have experienced single parenting. And 2% of U.S. children live with custodial grandparents. Figure 8.5, page 198 in your book, household types for U.S. children under 18 years of age. If you notice, there's just a lot more higher percentage of children growing up in a single parent. Okay, single-parent families are more common among African American and Native American families. These groups have higher rates of births to single mothers. Single mothers are less likely to marry as well. And a lot of times grandparents are traditionally there to support the single mothers. Figure 8.6, page 198 in your book, percentage of births to unmarried women across racial ethnic groups in the United States. The rate of births to unmarried women has increased across all groups in the United States over recent decades. These statistics are one reason for the growing number of school-age and teenage children who live in single-parent homes. And it's from the National Center of Health Statistics. Concerns about children's sexual identity and orientation are not supported by research. So gay and lesbian parents, there's no express social or cognitive development difference between the children of gay parents and the children of hetero couples. Aging and for custodial grandparents, aging and parenting stress cause anxiety and depression. Attempts to measure caregiving effectiveness are often confounded by traumatic circumstances leading to grandparent placements. So grandparents are often put in charge. Let's talk about divorce and the impact on children. Children in step-parent families have higher rates of delinquency, more behavior problems, and lower grades. Divorce does create financial hardships. Transitions create upheaval lasting several years. Parenting patterns shift away from authoritative. Extended families can mitigate some difficulties with divorce. Personally, as a school counselor, I saw some kids deal well with divorce because there was less arguing and fighting in the home, and they had quality time with both parents. Others I saw them take it hard, parents separating, and it affected their school performance and social performance. True or false? When considering the psychological effects on children, the optimal family structure has two biological parents. Use information from your text to support your answer. Your text supports suggesting that optimal family structure is two biological parents. Single parent parenting when poverty is an issue correlates with negative effects on development. Children of single parents are twice as likely to drop out of high school, twice as likely to have a child by 20, less likely to have a steady job. Preschoolers are less cognitively and socially advanced. So when divorce is unavoidable, try to keep changes to a minimum, consider placing a child with his or her same gender parent, engage in custodial parent to help children stay in touch with the non-custodial parent. Keep open conflict to a minimum. Do not use the child as a go-between or emotional support system for his or her parents. So you decide which of these two statements you must agree with. Given that divorce is traumatic for children, courts should require parents with children who want a divorce to go through counseling aimed at determining whether reconciliation is possible, or courts should not require parents with children who want divorce to go through counseling aimed at determining whether reconciliation is possible, because conflict-ridden marriage may be just as harmful to children as divorces. Next is family structure. Parenthood after divorce reduces the financial and emotional resources. Any transition involves upheaval. Authoritative parenting likely diminishes, and extended family networks mitigate the impact. Finally, successful play is associated with the development of social skills. Solitary play usually happens among all ages of children. Parallel play comes along around 14 to 18 months. Cooperative play usually happens around 2 to 4 years old. What's really fun is YMCA soccer with 3-year-olds. They all, when they have the ball, it's just them and the ball. They haven't learned how to work as a team, but it's hilarious and fun to watch. Okay, changes in the form of frequency of aggression from ages 2 to 10. Here you'll see examples of physical, verbal, goal of aggression, and occasion of aggression. 3-year-old girls engage in more parallel type play. 3-year-old boys tend to be more aggressive and rejected. Social skills training helps rejected children to gain acceptance. Poor group entry skills display differently in boys and girls. Girls spend more time in parallel rather than cooperative play. Boys, okay, so anyways, I'm just repeating myself. Here's a nice little video here on early childhood. So there's initial aggression in 2 to 3-year-olds. It might involve hitting and throwing things. The instrumental aggression is intended to obtain something a child wants. So it's aggression to get what they want. Older children have what's called hostile aggression. It's used to hurt another or gain advantage. With good verbal skills comes verbal aggression. Physical aggression declines as dominance hierarchies emerge. Dominance hierarchies are arrangements of children into pecking orders of leaders and followers. Under what circumstances would you most likely observe each kind of preschool aggression? There's the aggression frustration hypothesis. It declines with communication skills. So when kids learn to communicate more, they're less likely to be aggressive. So reinforcement and modeling of aggression. Trait aggression is personality style that develops as a way of life. It may have a genetic basis. It's seen in abusive families. There's a lack of affection in families. Aggressive children lag behind in understanding other children's intentions, but can improve with proper training. There's aggression theories. There's a aggression frustration hypothesis. It declines with communication skills. There's reinforcement and modeling of aggression by Bandura. Say children basically learn it. When they see it modeled, they tend to be aggressive themselves. Trait aggression is where it's a genetic base. It's seen in abusive families. There's a lack of affection in families. So it's a personality style that develops as a way of life. And then aggressive children lag behind in understanding other children's intentions, but this can improve with training. Next is the development of what's called pro-social behavior. That's any actions that benefit or help another person. It's evident that at 2 to 3 years of age, some behaviors increase with age. Children who show altruistic behaviors are popular with peers. Parental influences, such as loving in warm family climate, explain consequences clearly to children. Providing pro-social attributions, that is, positive statements about the underlying cause for helpful behavior, helps increase pro-social behavior. Finally, friendships become more stable with time. Early are friendships related to social competence. At 18 months old, some toddlers express friendships. At 3-year-olds, 20% of preschoolers have stable playmates. At 4 years old, 30% of the child's time is spent with another child. And then those friendships become more stable over time, but are still primitive by adult standards. This concludes this unit. Have a great evening.